Help, we're sinking! In addition to the dying polar bears at the North Pole and the snow-free alpine glaciers, there's another major symbol of man-made climate change, the Pacific Islands, which are struggling with rising sea levels. The Maldives, Kiribati, Tuvalu. Quickly, there's talk of the dying South Pacific state or the beginning of the end of the world. Thousands of articles report almost daily on the sinking island groups. Now people even want to save Tuvalu digitally in the cloud. Tragic stories that are gripping, because even if the average media consumer has somehow become skeptical about New York City standing underwater, the tiny little paradises at the end of the world are under threat and we have to do something about it. In our case, save carbon dioxide to stop global warming. This is like so many green and ecological issues. There's discussion, but only about how. So how can we stop climate change? Fewer combustion engines, more hydrogen, more district heating, less coal-fired power, more international commitments, higher carbon dioxide tax, etc. and so on? Moderate citizens are calling for the market or even nuclear power plants to be used slowly and in a controlled manner for climate protection. Radical climate protectors want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions to zero quickly. What is not discussed at almost any point, is the premise even true? Are the Pacific Islands sinking at all? Doubting this is completely absurd, isn't it? Not quite, because there's a big problem. The land area of the Pacific atolls is getting bigger and bigger. This is because the islands have been growing for several decades. Some researchers made these discoveries back into the 2010s, and they were confirmed by 2 independent scientific publications in 2018. Virginie Duval from the Institut du Littoral in La Rochelle examined 709 atolls and islands and was able to show that the vast majority of islands are getting bigger. Among the large islands over 10 hectares, there was not a single island whose land area was getting smaller. Paul Kench and his colleagues from the School of Environment at the University of Auckland, who published a paper in Nature, came to a similar conclusion. They took a closer look at the development, using Tuvalu as a case study, and examined the change in area of the 9 atolls with 101 islands over the last 43 years. The result was clear. Only 1 island had disappeared, although it was only 800 square meters in size. 28 islands became smaller, but on average only by 0.5% in land area. However, 8 out of 9 atolls recorded a net increase in area, which corresponds to a total of 73 of the 101 islands. Among them, there were even islands that doubled in size. The whole thing looks like this on diagram. You can really see a pattern at first, but at second glance you can see that the vast majority of islands have seen a small increase. Based on satellite images, the whole thing then looks like this. At some coastal locations, the islands are retreating, at others they are growing. The migration movement of an island can be seen particularly clearly in Te Afuone, which first migrated to the northwest before turning around and then migrating back to the southwest. What can we learn from all these observations? The level of the sea level, regardless of whether it stays the same, sinks, rises slowly or rises rapidly, has an absolutely negligible influence on the islands of the Pacific atolls. Whether an island sinks or even grows depends primarily on the accumulation of sediment caused by waves or storms. The authors write, existing paradigms are based on the flawed assumption that islands are static landforms that will simply sink when sea levels rise. In fact, as has now been demonstrated for the Great Barrier Reef, islands and atolls are dynamic organisms that change their appearance due to many complex factors. It must be clear to anyone seriously concerned with climate change and its consequences that the discrepancy between serious science and popular science reporting could not be greater. The narrative of sinking islands is deliberately repeated over and over again in order to push through a political agenda, even if the facts now look completely different. Even if people believe in a man-made climate change and rising sea levels, the past 40 years have shown that climate change does not pose a threat to the Pacific Islands and that the atolls are far from sinking into the sea. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up and and subscribe to this channel.